Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Andrea Dalton. I work for University Health Behavioral Health, which is part of the Metro Council. Metro Council, or the Metropolitan Council of Community Mental Health Centers, is a collaborative membership organization representing the public mental health system of community behavioral health centers serving the greater metropolitan Kansas City area. We provide support to our member organizations and education, information, and resources to the public on accessing quality health services. We host the Mental Health KC Conference every May, as well as provide free webinars on the second and fourth Thursday of every month. At the end of the webinar today, we will put the link and password to get the certificate of attendance for this webinar. Just a reminder, as we get started, the views and opinions presented are those of the speaker and do not necessarily represent the opinions of Metro Council. I am excited to introduce today Elaine Metcalf, speaking on addressing youth mental health by fostering equity, inclusion, and belonging among young people. Let me give you just a brief bio of Elaine before I pass it over to her. Dr. Elaine Metcalf is a compassionate educator with more than 30 years of experience. Dr. Metcalf began her second career in nonprofit management, taking on the role of executive director for Pro Deo Youth Center. Pro Deo is Lee Summit's only free after-school and summer program. Pro Deo is seen as a partner in surrounding teenagers with adult support when the problems of teenagers seem bigger than they can handle. At its core, Pro Deo is about keeping our teens safe from harm to themselves or harm to others. Pro Deo Youth Center is poised to significantly grow acute prevention services for teens and families living in Jackson County. In 2023, Pro Deo was identified as a transformational program by the state of Missouri and the city of Lee Summit for providing critical services that build resilience for underserved teens in our region. And before I pass it over to Dr. Metcalf to get us started today, I want to just mention very quickly that she is very open to you participating actively in this session today in the chat or in the Q&A. One note about the chat is while I have it activated so you can chat with everyone, I do encourage you to make sure that it says everyone in the little blue box before you push enter or send on that. Otherwise, it may only go to the host and panelists, and not everyone may be able to see it. So just wanted to make that quick technology note. And you'll also notice that we are in webinar format. So the chat and the Q&A are the primary ways that you'll be able to connect during this presentation. Though later on, there may be an opportunity for you to unmute and share, and we will work through that as we get to that point. So without further ado, I will pass it over to Dr. Elaine Metcalf. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Andrea, for being such a great co-host in this. I appreciate you. So good afternoon, everyone. As she said, I'm here today just to share a little bit of insight from what I've learned. And so as she said, I'm a longtime educator, retired for like 5 minutes and started going into nonprofit leadership. Not a route I ever would have dreamed of myself, but I can tell you that it is my passion. It is what drives me every day to do this work. You know, as an educator, I was always drawn to those students in my classroom who might fall through the cracks if we didn't take care of them, like just a little extra because you knew they were carrying some burdens. So it's always been my passion. I think it comes from my background. I grew up in poverty and came through that and consider myself resilient in that respect. And the things that caring mentors taught me along the way, I so just want to pay it forward as much as I can. As long as I'm still productive and able to work in this environment, I will. So I'm going to share my screen with you now so you can see the slide deck. And let's see, let me make sure I get the right one. Okay, can everybody see the first slide? Hopefully you can.
Looks good.
Okay, looks good. Thanks, Andrea. So as she mentioned, so I'm with Pro Deo Youth Center, which is a nonprofit. It's a 501c3. We've been around for 13 years. So yes, we're celebrating that this is our teenage year, which is kind of poetic for me. And so here's how it works. We get teens to come through our doors by offering fun, activities for them. And of course, the old educator in me is going to have them learn some things along the way, some life skills. So we throw in some arts and crafts and some, health and wellness kind of things, expressive art kinds of things. But I'm also going to throw in some work on their job skills, their social skills, their social emotional learning, if you will, so that they can learn to advocate for themselves. So that's the difference about working with older youth. They have so much more say in how and where they spend their time, right? I mean, they're not like your littles where you take them places, you know where they are, you may even be with them the whole time. Parents or families are entrusting their teenagers with us. And the teenagers typically choose to come to us. Occasionally we'll get teenagers that maybe a counselor or their therapist has said, you need to get a set of friends, or you need to go where you can feel accepted and belong. And so they may come through our door, maybe in the very beginning begrudgingly, but once they learn about what we do and how we operate, they are quick to continue to come back and stay on their own. And so we get them through the door by the activities, but once they're there, at our core, this is truly what we're about. We are about keeping teenagers safe from harm to themselves or harm to others. And we do that through an amazing staff that works with them and amazing volunteers. So I'm going to just share some of the reasons why I do this. And what you can walk away with today, hopefully, is a few tools that if you are either in this business or you feel like your community could use a place that's after school, that's summer, and how would you go about getting the right partners, the right curriculum, the right tools to really make it impactful. So I'd like to start with one activity where I get everybody to participate that's online today. So I call this Ready, Set, Go, or some people call it a chat burst. But here's what I'd like for you to do. I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to give you a prompt. So if you'll go over to the chat and be ready to type in your answer, but don't press the enter until I say ready, set, go. Can you see that the old educator's coming out of me? I want participation here, class participation, webinar participation. So here's what I'd like for you to do. So, and then Andrea, if you would tell me after about a minute, maybe 30 seconds, what some of the answers are, that would be great. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna read a question. You're gonna type in your 2 or 3 word response. That's all I need, 2 or 3 words. And then you're going to press the enter key whenever I say go. Okay, so here's the question. What do you believe is the #1 issue facing teenagers today? Say it again. In your opinion, what is the #1 issue that teenagers are facing in today's world? So type your answer, and then I'm going to say, ready, set, go. Now press your enter button. Let's see what happens in the chat box. Lots of answers coming in, Andrea?
Yes, there are lots of answers coming in. There's a lot of mental health.
Yes.
There's a lot of, there's a few comments about bullying, social pressure, social media pressure, peer pressure, that sort of area. Lack of connection. Social media is making a lot of appearances in this list. Loneliness.
Yes.
Self-identity, anxiety, depression, wanting to feel accepted, parent participation. I think I kind of hit most of it.
That's it. Wonderful. You guys, that is wonderful. You are already at the table knowing what we know about teenagers. Now, how do we help them? How do we become a part of the solution? Well, that's where Pro Deo Youth Center, I believe, is where obviously there's no one answer to any of those issues that teenagers are facing. But one thing that we believe is paramount is that they feel safe and included wherever they are choosing to hang out. And so, of course, we're an after-school program and a summer program. So I'm going to take you through a few fast facts about, first of all, after-school and summer programs and why they're effective. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some best practices for engaging in older youth, and always keep that in mind. My experiences with Pro Deo Youth Center is 9th through 12th graders. So it would be very different if I were engaging with middle schoolers, and it obviously even younger than that would look very different. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some evidence-based research that I have uncovered that I think really speaks to how you operate an after-school program like this. And then kind of our approach to diversity and equity and inclusion, how we approach it as a staff, as a board of directors who oversee the organization. And I'll get into that as well. And then at the very end, I'm going to talk to you a little bit how we document our outcomes. Obviously, as a nonprofit, the best thing you can ever be to your supporters is transparent. Like, here is where the money comes in, here's where the money goes out, and here's what we're doing with every thing that you contribute to this particular mission. Okay, so let's go on to the first slide. And this, you guys, is the reason why I do this. When you take a look at 5,224 hours of direct services, that's what we logged in the 22-23 school year. That means every time a teen walks through our door, that's 2 hours of intervention. As long as they're with us for those 2 hours from that 3 to 5 p.m., we know that we are keeping them safe and that we are engaging with them. And we know that they are not going to experience loneliness, because only acceptance is paramount at Pro Deo's Teen Center. Now, here is what we say to our supporters, that this is what we call a value proposition. You may have heard that terminology before, but basically it's we promise that we are going to offer free counseling and tutoring. And I emphasize that word free. That is one way where we make sure that there is complete equity at the Teen Center. It's not like, okay, you pay and you don't pay. We are not separating out the haves and the have-nots. That is so key to me. I would have been one of those coming through poverty as a child, that I could never have joined anything that had a fee. There just was no way. I had a single mom, and there's 7 in our family. So we will never charge for our counseling services, our tutoring services, or anything. We promise that we are going to keep them safe. And the way we do that is with a ratio of supervision of adult to teenager. So we typically have a 1-to-8 ratio. And you may go, oh my goodness, that's pretty steep, Elaine, a 1-to-8. But I believe, and our staff believes, that you need to be able to have great interaction with the teens. And it would be hard to do that if it were 1-to-50. I always say I will never have a gathering of 50 teenagers unless I've got adequate staff to supervise and to interact with them. That's how you can say to your supporters, we are going to keep them safe, because we keep that ratio there. The other thing is we make sure they have exposure to the community and some careers and activities, because we're about teaching them to be lifelong learners. In other words, we only get them through their high school years, but we hope they are equipped when they leave our high school program. We hope they are equipped with a few skills that help them remain resilient, even into young adulthood and beyond. We help them even after they graduate. We say, once you've been a Pro Deo team or been in our Pro Deo system, you're always going to feel connected to the staff, the volunteers. So we do have an alumni program where we continue to try to help them with their careers and getting jobs. We're 5 days a week, year round. We will always make sure that all the funding that we do collect does go right to direct services to teens. So here are a few of the this is a little bit about our target population. I'm often asked, so who can come to Pro Deo? Any teen can come to Pro Deo. It is not an application system. It is just a registration process. And that's key to say that in any kind of a dialogue. We just need you to register so that we have record of emergency contact. We have permission to transport you in our 15-passenger vans if we're going to take you out in the community. We need parent permission to make sure that, hey, when something does get tough for a teen, we want them to be able to go into maybe a small group or a one-on-one session. And I'll tell you how that works a little bit through our partnerships. So we do need that registration process. The other thing is I need to know how many teens are coming so that staff can have, so that we can have adequate supervision. When I first came to Pro Deo, we did not have a system for knowing that. We would put out our calendar of activities and we might have 30 teens show up, and I only had my 2 staff or 3 staff, and I quickly knew that we needed to change that up a little bit. So it took a while. I can tell you it did take a while, first of all, to get the funding to get a system, a database system where we could have our own portal for check-ins. So it took a while, but now we have a system for that. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about that later. We are a registration process. We're open to any teen, but it is grades 9 through 12. We've done a few middle school programs, but I'm still waiting to make that happen on a full scale, to be able to serve middle school full time year round. But right now we just do kind of workshops to get them ready for the high school program. That's kind of where we are in the middle school space. I'm going to show you that I'm going to flip through some pictures here. And what I want you to garner out of these pictures is how we continue. And when I say we, you guys, I have a whole staff that's programming, and they are young and they are energetic and they are way more in tune with what teenagers need and how they like to have fun. They know about the gaming systems. They know about just different things that I would not know about. So that's why hiring the right program staff who truly can relate to these teenagers, that's what gets them through the door. So I'm going to flip through just some pictures so you kind of get an idea how we vary the activities, and then I'll tell you how how the programming staff comes up with these activities. So this first one, obviously, we do lots of with partnerships. So this is Starlight coming in to do an improv day, and oh my gosh, these teens love that. So I'm going to just flip through some pictures. You can see how we combine. Obviously, you got to have some food when you've got teenagers involved. They're hungry when they get out of school. And of course, we feed them every Friday night as well. But you can see that we just have so much fun. We do lots of service in the community. We have a photographer who takes their senior photos for free. So there's one of our young men, Isaiah, getting a senior photo. Teenagers love animals. I tell you, it doesn't matter what we plan. If there's an animal involved, we tend to get really high numbers with that. So we just try to mix it up every day with what we're doing. Now, one of the things that I'm showing you now is what I call fun facts or fast facts, I guess, about after school programs. So, the settings where young people stay is just really important at this age because, again, they walk to us or we go pick them up. They could just as easily go to a park or something like that. And that's kind of how Pro Deo started. It was started by a police officer and his wife, who was an educator, who said that teenagers were choosing risk behaviors because no one really cared what they were doing after school. They would just as easily walk to a park or walk to somebody's house and begin to, experiment in risky behaviors. And so the police officer and his wife began to form relationships with these teens. And the next thing you know, they're meeting, first of all, at somebody's home in the park, in the driveway, to just have food and fellowship in that way. And then the next thing you know, in 2010, Andy and Kylie Ewing were able to establish a 501c3 called Pro Deo. So we are an after-school program and a summer program for older youth. Take a look at some of these statistics here. It says more than 2 in 5 high schoolers report feeling sad or hopeless. And this stat is up 50% since 2011. And you can imagine that it's probably continues to grow, especially as a result of the pandemic. Nearly 3 in 10 high schoolers say that they've experienced poor mental health in the past 30 days. So we gather all this stuff from an organization called the After School Alliance, all these statistics from an After School Alliance Association. And you know what? The fourth bullet there, it says more than 3 in 4 parents are worried about their child, and in this case, teenagers struggling with anxiety or depression. So at Pro Deo, we like to come alongside the teenager and the parent. So sometimes it's a lack of parenting that might be going on at home. Sometimes it might be a grandmother raising a teenager, and that grandmother or grandparent is kind of at their wits' end on what and how to connect with that particular generation. So at Pro Deo, we are not replacing a parent. We are right along beside them in whatever capacity they need us. So just flipping through a few of our best practices for how we engage with this older youth. Our model is what we call the pillar model. And I'm going to show you in a few minutes what that pillar model looks like. But basically, it's about varying the activities. If we did nothing but community service, our numbers in attendance would go way down. If we did nothing but arts and crafts, our numbers would go down. Even if it's cooking or whatever, some kids love to learn how to cook and get involved in that. Gardening is another one. We have our own garden called Pro Deo Rotary Learning Garden. And so some kids love it, some kids don't. So that's why varying our Monday and Wednesday activities is important. Then Tuesdays and Thursdays is our tutoring days, and they come when they need access to our volunteers who are tutors. And then on Friday nights, we call it our Fun Friday Night. So different organizations in the community provide dinner. Sometimes it's home cooked, sometimes it's just from a restaurant. But either way, we make sure that our teens get a hot meal on Friday nights, and then they spend the Friday nights with us doing some kind of fun activity or going on a field trip on a Friday evening. So let me tell you a little bit how Pro Deo over the course of the 13 years. When it started, it was one night a week. Then as the funding came along and the grants came along, they moved to 3 days per week. Then there was a period of time where funding lagged. And the nice thing about that, they just moved it back to just being Friday nights only. And then, so you kind of, we still do this at Pro Deo, you kind of have to ebb and flow in the current Pro Deo, you kind of have to ebb and flow for the funding. You don't want to get in a situation where you're offering all these free activities, but the funding isn't coming in to support all that. So it's kind of a balance when you're in this space. Here's an example of what tutoring looks like. And you may wonder, now what's tutoring and behavioral health and all that have to do? Well, as you know, teenagers, tutoring, first of all, is very expensive. So we offered it no cost. But many teens have difficulties in school, and this can lead to them dropping out and not coming to their full potential. So offering these free tutoring services help teens get back on track in their schoolwork. We don't judge them for what their grades look like. We don't have a relationship where we look at their grades. If they share with us, again, we're teaching them advocacy, right? They need to share with us. Here's what my grades are. Here's where I need help. And I mean, to me, that's so much better than like a teen walking through the door and we say to them, oh, now you need tutoring, right? You can't do any fun things until you get tutoring. We just don't like that model. We would rather teach them advocacy for themselves and also teach the importance of what a high school, earning that diploma or that equivalency exam, whatever that means. So teens, this is what I say about any tutoring program that you might start, because that may be where some of you are, is what's the one service you can provide that it's still about their mental health and keeping them safe, but truly you're getting those teens connected to caring adults. From all my years in the classroom and my years at Pro Deo, teens need to know that you care as an adult before they will ever care about their subject matter. So they don't care about their math grade or their science grade until they know you as an adult care. Sometimes that parent cares just as much as we do as staff or volunteer, and sometimes that's missing. And so sometimes like, hey, we care. We want to celebrate you. Excuse me. We want to celebrate you when you graduate. So that's kind of key, or what I call a best practice in tutoring services. So I mentioned the word pillar. So this is what our evidence-based research shows about how you vary the activities for older youth. And so you can kind of see that these are our buckets or our pillars, if you will, that help teenagers get the core knowledge and skills and competencies that they may need during those years. We model it after, and I'm sharing the link with you. I'm assuming you will get this slide deck delivered to you. So you'll have the link there where those core competencies. Now we've kind of put our own twist on it, but the document that you can access, it's a free toolkit for an after-school program, allows us to vary up our activities. So our programming staff produce a calendar of activities, and we have it in print form, but we have it also in an app that the students can use on their phone, and they pick and choose what activities they want to come to. We basically plan the semester at a time. Now, we didn't start out that way. When I first came on board, we were like maybe a week ahead on what was going on. But the true easy button is when you kind of have a calendar planned out, and you, even again, if it's not 5 days a week, if it's 1 or 2 days a week, at least having that calendar is important. So I'm just flipping through a few of the pictures that show how we vary those activities, but how the teens still come through our doors. And so this is just how we mix it up, but you can also see some. Now I look at these pictures and I go, which one are the adults and which ones are the teens? They all look so young to me, but we definitely have adults in the mix that are just engaging with these teens anytime they're at the teen center. And just have some fun, indoors, outdoors. We use all kinds of spaces in our community because we're in a 1,500 square foot space right now. In the future, a couple of years from now, we'll have a much bigger space. But for right now, that's kind of where we are. So now let's dive into what is our approach to diversity, equity, and inclusion? Well, first of all, to me, the inclusion is we don't charge. So there's never going to be a difference between the haves and the have-nots. The other thing, though, is we recognize our differences. One of the things that is so paramount when I onboard staff, when we onboard volunteers, or even the teens themselves, they have a little onboarding interview. And we try to make sure that they know that acceptance is paramount. When somebody walks through the door of our teen center and they may look different, sound different, talk different, whatever it happens to be, we need to accept them. So educating everyone at the teen center on our differences is important, but then we also need to model what harmony looks like. What does acceptance look like? And so I believe our staff and our volunteers do that, but we also want our teens to do that as well. So I'm striving to create harmony, not be offensive, or work off of any political, social agendas is key. And then just that awareness of and sensitivity. And that's again modeled in our board and to our staff and to our students. So this is our staff that is on board at Pro Deo. Some are part-time, some are full-time. One of them is actually a Rediscover behavioral health employee, and but she is paid by Rediscover, but she reports to Pro Deo for some of her hours, and she does a lot of the one-on-ones that are deeper and more intense than what our programming staff can handle. So it's just so great to have that relationship with a mental health agency like Rediscover. So I got another question for you. Are we ready to do another ready, set, go? I've done a lot of talking here and I want to be respectful and try to get you engaged here because our next thing is going to talk about staffing and some of our best practices around the administration of a program like this. So over in the chat box, everybody get ready to type something for me if you would. I don't know everybody's background in the chat. Hopefully you've responded with the organization or company you work for in your role, and that will help me to get to know you a little bit better. But I wonder if everybody could answer this question. So type your answer and then wait until I say ready, set, go, okay? So here's the question. What is one of the top traits you look for when you're onboarding a staff, an intern, or a volunteer to work alongside you in whatever work you're doing? What is one of the top traits that you look for when you are onboarding staff, interns, or volunteers in your current line of work? Ready, set, go.
It's fun to see them all flying.
Good. Thank you, Andrea.
Yep. So there's a lot of responses that say compassion, warmth, non-judgmental, open-minded, kind of in that realm. A few that are talking about flexibility, being driven, being reliable, having a team mentality, engaging practices, empathetic is in there several times, openness,
Wonderful.
understanding. So, yeah.
That's wonderful. Andrea, thank you for sharing those. Oh my goodness, you guys are spot on. You have got this. You answered the first question correctly and you've got the second question, if there is a right or wrong answer to this. But I noticed nobody in there said they got to have technical skills. They got to do social media. I love it. You went right to those soft skills that are so important. Well, at Pro Deo, we take that really seriously too. We want to make sure that the people that we bring in, either as volunteers, interns, or as staff, have at their heart why the mission of our teen center at their heart. We can teach them the other things, right? We can teach them how to manage discipline. We can teach them how to, settle adversity if there happens to be some differences of opinions among teens. We can teach all those things. We can't teach compassion. We can't teach caring, right? They have to come with that already at their heart. So that's part of that diversity, equity, inclusion is bringing on staff that have that as their core. So this is Demetrius Walker. He's leading a session though with our teams on diversity, equity, inclusion. So, it's not about just modeling it. That's important, but it's also a little bit of educating them on people's differences and why they say what they say so that we can teach acceptance and tolerance, right? So this was a great little exercise with Demetrius Walker, who just got the teams talking and engaging about what it looks like in their world. So volunteers are a key part of what we do. So one of the best things we do with engaging volunteers is we make sure that there's an interview. We have an application process first, or, they need to apply, but then we also have a volunteer coordinator who tries to do a face-to-face with them, because you guys, even the volunteers who are at your teen center are the face of your organization, right? So we don't, oh, well, you're a volunteer, you're paid. They all look the same. We're going to make sure that they all truly abide by our mission and they accept, because otherwise they could be a huge liability. If they're volunteering, but they're then out in the community saying something different about your teen center, oh, that's a real flag, I would say, a red flag of, oh my goodness, we need to do a much better job of onboarding the volunteers, and make obviously background checks. That's, that should be a given, that anybody that is going to be working with teenagers goes through that background check. But it's more than that. It should talk about the more compelling reasons why volunteers want to work. So I put a link to an article in here when at your leisure, and when you get the slide deck, click on that, because it does talk about how nonprofits in particular should go through a screening process with their applicants. But I can tell you what does my heart good is when I walk into a teen center and I see a volunteer like this lady high-fiving one of our teens, and oh my gosh, it just makes me dive in to do this work even more, because this little girl was living in actually a homeless shelter, and she was walking from her school to get to our teen center, and then a taxi would come and pick her up and take her back to her shelter. But she came to get tutoring, and the tutors that we onboard really do care. So, and that's key to that. So every volunteer we have has gone through some kind of vetting process. I talked about the power of partnerships. I talked to you a little bit about our Rediscover partnership, and that's how we have a social worker or a youth mental health specialist at the teen center. Most anytime that we are there, she is there, and so that she can do those deeper dives. Jackson County Agency is it's a Missouri agency that helps us out with some funding, and I love what they make. They hold us accountable with some measurable objectives, and I'm going to share one of those with you in just a minute. What we use is we use a system called Apricot. Don't work for Apricot. I'm just saying it is the one system that that lets us onboard volunteers. It lets us onboard have an application system for our teens when they register. It helps us log such things as our one-on-one. It logs, we can log our volunteer hours, our number of rides that we give. So it's that one-stop portal, case management software, if you will, that helps us keep our data in one place. And then of course we use that data to make decisions, right? If our numbers are going way down just with our Monday and Wednesday activities, for example, it's on our programming staff to, at our weekly staff meetings to go, oh, those activities aren't working. Maybe we need to mix it up going forward. At the same time, remember this. Data is also your chance to celebrate your successes. So we don't use data to always look at ourselves critically. We use data to also lift our staff up. This is really hard work that they're doing. When you're in direct services for youth mental health issues, it gets tough because the burden that some of these teens are carrying every day, and we've got to empower them to set it aside just long enough to connect and to learn and to grow. And so we also want to celebrate those successes when we've had a really good roundtable or a discussion, a small group discussion, or we just happen to plan a really wonderful, fall festival or something. We celebrate the number of teens that are coming through the doors, because that means we are being good role models, and that we are working smarter and saving precious time by looking at the data and then responding to it accordingly. So I can tell you the reason why Apricot, while we do pay for it and it's quite costly, it is a time saver, but it's also my experience with teen centers is it drop-ins where we don't know they're coming are a little bit of a gamble or a wager. Again, what if 50 kids dropped in and you only had 2 staff members? And what if one teen is in crisis mode? Now you have 1 staff member supervising. To me, that is not a good model. When really you're doing direct services for behavioral health, that's what we are at our core. So we like for them to register. And that little app there, that icon there is the band app. It's a free app, but it allows us to put our calendar of activities in, and we always know who's coming for tutoring, who's coming any day of the week. So I told you one of the grants that we write for holds us accountable for data. And I love this. It's one of the reasons why we needed to go to a model. So for this one, we write a measurable outcome, and then we have to document it each quarter. We could not do this kind of data. How many hours of instruction did we provide in a quarter? So in this Q1 report or whatever, we're looking at 1,000 hours. That means something. That means that they are investing in our nonprofit, and we can in turn tell them what we're doing in the community in the youth mental health arena. And I think that's what I believe keeps our funding model strong. Because of that portal, we can also provide these great infographics. This is kind of just a snapshot from our annual report, but we couldn't do this if we didn't. It would be too time consuming to track the number of meals, the number of rides, the number of hours that we're conducting one-on-ones without some kind of a portal. I'm going to just flip through a few of the fast facts, if you will. Again, reporting our numbers to our investors, our supporters is really important. So from meals served to van rides to the one-on-one counseling sessions and our tutoring hours, all are important. I also promised that I would talk to you a little bit about what I would call anecdotal data or I guess reflective assessments. So here's one document, one tool that we downloaded from the Search Institute resources. So that link is in this presentation. But so this is a screenshot of a survey that gives staff data on how they are doing at developing relationships with the teens. So it's one thing that we get them through the door. That's great, right? So that's one thing. But it's another thing that says, are the staff and the volunteers connecting with these teams at a level? So you can kind of look in at some of the questions that we're asking, and we share these results, and it's all anonymous, so they don't know which teams are responding, but you can see that we use a survey, a reflective survey that is very specific to the staff. And it also helps them grow, right? Like, oh man, I need to be better at asking the questions. Maybe I need to be better at, showing I care or positive encouragement. So this is such a great little tool. And this is just a snapshot of it that you'll get access to. Again, this is our model, but if you go to the Search Institute, they have these developmental relationships out there that you can tailor and make your own. Really important that we share those results in an open dialogue, and we do that privately one-on-one with the staff, but then the staff get together and they talk about the results. So it's not just enough to administer the reflective survey, but to also have a dialogue about it. Another thing that we do is we ask our teens some reflective assessments that help us figure out what we need to do with parent education, with programming. So here's a question. I'm going to share you a couple of these. We asked the teens, how do you act around your peers compared to around your parents? And they gave us some very insightful answers. We use this data and we share it in our parent newsletter. We share it in our annual report, like just little tidbits of it, because I think it's telling to know that we're asking teenagers how they feel and how they react to their peers and to their parents. Here's another one. What is the one thing you wish you could say to your parent if they were sitting here in a neutral situation? Oh my goodness, these are very telling answers. As a parent, this would mean something to me. And to hear that the teens are using their voice to say, this is what I would say if it truly were a neutral environment. Okay, so I'm going to give you some time for Q&A, but I'm going to end this next few slides by telling you how Pro Deo stays in operation and how we have stayed in this space for 13 years. We build community partnerships, not only by hosting events. So we do offer some fundraising events, but it's not it. Obviously, it's about the fundraising, but it's also our chance to share our mission in that environment, because if they don't follow you on social media, maybe they don't subscribe to your newsletter, you need another venue. And so we have a gala, but at that gala, while they're having a great meal and dressing up for the event, we also have a panel of our alumni up there sharing their stories of what Pro Deo meant. So our fundraising events keep to our mission as well. We write a lot of grants. So it costs quite a bit, obviously, to run a teen center, because with anything, it's about the supervision. I've been asked, oh, why aren't you totally volunteer? Well, the thing about volunteers is if they get something that comes up, it's so easy to say, no, I can't be there today. And I don't ever want to be in a situation where we're relying on a volunteer to do supervision. And so we try to build in a budget that includes supervision at the teen center. Field trip activities, those things, the supplies that we need, all those things go into our budget. Insurance, we definitely need that liability insurance for our volunteers, for the kids who ride in the vans, our drivers of the vans. So some of our budget has to do with liability, but all of that is, again, how do you run a teen center? And then how we generate the revenue, as I said, is through grants, lots of grant writing. That's kind of my background. When I was with the school district, I did a lot of that. So I kind of bring that to the table, but I rely on volunteers to help with the fundraising, because that is not my background with the fundraising events. So I'm going to, hopefully what you will do when you receive this presentation is you will use some of those links that are within the slide deck to formulate your own toolkit for yourself. If this is a space that you'd like to go into, I challenge you to come alongside me in this work. I don't know about you, but one teen suicide is one too many in our community. One teen living in isolation is one too many. And if we can advocate for one teen to be safe and to find hope for their future, I think we're in the right endeavor. And so come along beside me in this youth mental health crisis, and let's be a part of the solution. So I'm going to open it up.
All right, thank you so
For
much.
questions, I'm happy to answer any if there's any in the chat room, and I'm going to rely on Andrea to receive that one.
Fantastic. And actually, Elaine, maybe while I'm doing this, if you want to stop sharing your screen, and if you want to pull the shared link for your slide deck, you could put that in the chat. And then I think then from the recording, people will be able to get to that way as well.
Okay.
So
I'm going to share.
Yeah.
Okay,
so while she's doing that, I'll just invite folks who are joining us today to either type in the chat, or you can use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen to submit a question or a comment, and I'll be happy to read those out. Or if you'd like to speak up, just drop a note in the chat to me, and I will ask you to unmute and share your thoughts. This was really great information, Elaine. It's nice to know, like, kind of the nuts and bolts of how your program is running, like what kind of keeps it going, and the things that are, both the financial aspects as well as the ideological aspects that kind of keep building resilience in our youth. Because I work in the Center for Trauma-Informed Innovation. Like, we're always focusing on trauma-informed practices and how can we build continue to build resilience, or really foster the resilience that everyone already has, right? And I think that when we look at ACE's research, for instance, the adverse childhood experiences, some of the newer research that's coming out now is around positive childhood experiences as well, and how when we have those supportive relationships, when we have a sense of belonging, especially when we're in high school. We have engagement in community activities. Like those are protective factors for our youth who are moving then into adulthood, and not just for our mental health, but physical health outcomes are tied to that as well. So just really appreciate what you have going on.
Thanks,
A couple
Andrea.
of comments and questions here that are popping in. A lot of people are saying thank you, love hearing about this. A comment, thank you for having a service that can help those who can and can't financially pay. This is just amazing. A lot of you're doing incredible work. Yes, yes. Someone asked if your program is offered to children who have behavioral issues.
Yeah, so we have, we don't have like paras and aides. So, if we have somebody who's nonverbal, that does present a challenge. But if it's really just maybe they're on the autism spectrum, oh my goodness, in fact, we get our staff trained in how to deal with teenagers who are on the spectrum and how we can help redirect, how we can find out how best to communicate with them. So we are accepted. We accept all students out there. Now, I will tell you, over my 5 years, and again, probably my old educator in me is, we have a plan though, in case there is a teen who is acting out. We always first try to find out why. So they're pulled aside privately and, note that behavior. But then we do have a process, so we try to help them, with a positive way to enter. What could you have said? We also help them say, I'm sorry, or, whatever it needs to be. I think a lot of that is they just don't know how to take back what they just said or what they just did. And so having that staff interaction. Now, at some point, it has gotten to this. We've asked students to take what we call a 1-week reflective break. And that means go home, think about, is Pro Deo really where you want to be? Can you stop doing that negative behavior and come back to us? Because that's what we want. We want them to come back. But if they are maybe disrespecting another teen, we can't overlook it. We can't turn a blind eye to that. We have to address it. And so we try to address it on the spot there and give them a chance to correct. But at some point, we say, okay, you're on a 1-week reflective break. And if that works, great, they come back. If we have to go to a month, to a semester, I can tell you it has not happened. Most all incidences are corrected with that one-on-one or with a 1-week reflective break. But yes, behavioral issues are not something we say, oh no, you can't come. We just make sure that they know that there are consequences, obviously, with any kind of behavior.
One question came in. We heard you're based in Lee Summit. Do you
Yes.
mostly have students that are from the Lee Summit School District, or are you open to any student?
So because we're open to anyone. Yes, we are open to anyone, but three high schools in Lee Summit, we pick up at 2 of the 3. One of the high schools is walking distance, so they just walk to us. But we have 2 15-passenger vans. Volunteers typically go and pick up at those schools. But our policy is we're open to anyone. We just can't provide transportation to any of the staff at our teen center and pick them up. Our doors are open, so open to anyone.
Thank you. There's a really great question here about non-English speaking students, or those who are from various multicultural background, and how you respond to that.
Yes. So we have what we call an ambassador program at the teen center. So, and this just happened. We had a new ESL, English second language as a second language student come through the door, or apply to come through the door. And one of the questions the parent asked is, how will we overcome that English Spanish barrier? He speaks Spanish. And I said, let me see. And so we talked to the staff. Do we have any bilingual students who are already coming to Pro Deo? And what we did then is paired them up. So we paired a bilingual student up with a English as second language, and that became their friend for the day or a few days until they could make their way into it. So for some, it was for some, that's not a hardship. Again, it depends on who the teens are at our teen center. But in that particular instance, we were able to address it.
One person asked, how can we volunteer?
My goodness, yes. So go to prodeoyouthcenter.org, and under the word community, you'll see a volunteer application. Two-step process. One is the volunteer application, and two is a background check. If they want to be providing direct services like leading an activity, driving, or what we call tutoring, or what we call extra hands. So sometimes you're not in charge of an activity, but you're just there to work alongside. So all of those options are in the application as to what they might want to do. So some people volunteer 1 hour a week. Some say, let me just help with your fundraising events. That's kind of my jam. And so wherever and however they want to connect, it starts with that community page on our website.
Fantastic. One person dropped in the chat, and this may be interesting to some attendees today who might be thinking about, like, how can I maybe start a program like this in my community? There is a semi-annual grant opportunity that Charlene has dropped in the chat. So encourage folks to check that out. And again, just lots of comments, Elaine, about how super your program is and how people are grateful that
I'm feeling the love. I'm feeling love.
Yeah. Definitely.
Mostly I want to be helpful. I don't know if I hit the mark on what you guys were wanting today, but if it sparks an interest in something, that's what I'm here for. So
yeah. Well, and I think, the information was fantastic. And I think that being able to know what else is in our communities, I mean, I'm assuming most people who are on the call today and most people who will view this recording later are in the Kansas City metro area. So I think just knowing what other programs are in our area and how we can work together, how we can partner up, how we can support each other, because we don't all have the ability to do everything for everybody, right? It really does. I mean, it's kind of a trite saying now, I suppose, but it really does take a village, right?
It does, yeah.
And we all have different specialties, and we have different areas of focus and different things that we're really passionate about. And I think being able to pair up with folks who are doing things that are different or thinking about it in a different way, like that just improves everything for everyone. So
absolutely.
We have a little bit more time. If anyone has any other questions or comments, feel free to drop those in the chat. I mean, I can just keep talking because I'm enjoying this a lot.
I normally I'm very windy, so the fact that I'm done a little bit early, that's amazing for me. Somebody needs to note that somewhere. Okay. I tend to be windy.
I will say, I'll just add another comment here, since I live in Lee Summit. So I have kids who are in the school district, and as a result of that, have just been aware of a lot of the diversity, equity, and inclusion kinds of work that the school district is trying to engage in. And I think that, we have these systems that are just old and hard to move, right? And just seeing the little bits of work that are happening, the little bits of work that's happening around, both in that kind of public school sector, as well as in some of the private partnering organizations, just to make our world, make our community a place that is accessible to everyone, that we build in the kinds of supports that people need in order to be successful in the way that they identify success for themselves,
right.
To be able to feel like you belong.
Right.
It's so important. So important. Oh, here we go. I vamped long enough that we got more questions in the chat. Thanks everybody for sticking with it. Yeah, so this is a really good question. How do you deal with serious current event issues that upset teens? So, right now there's, kind of a increase in the conflict in Israel. And that's obviously been going on for a long time. This last week has been really intense. Things like the Ukraine war comes to mind. And then I'm also thinking too about just what happens in our own community in terms of, violence in our communities, or all of those kinds of things that we just are exposed to a lot in the media. And then maybe kids are coming into your program aware of what's going on or personally impacted by some of that stuff. So how do you respond to that?
So that's a great question. And so that's the beauty, that the fact that we don't follow an absolute rigid curriculum where you don't have that ability to sway. I mean, coming in the school district, sometimes those curriculums were so tight, it was really hard to navigate and do something. At Pro Deo, we can do that. Maybe we had an art therapy session or something headed that day. But we know that what's important was maybe a tragic accident that happened out on 50 highway and a teenager was, killed. Something like that. You just go, that takes precedence. Teens they want to be heard. They want to make sure somebody's listening, right? And so you will hear this phrase a lot at Pro Deo: I hear you, I see you, I understand you. And that is just that affirmation that a teen knows, like, it's okay to talk about it. We even like a predator or something like that, where somebody that starts buzzing maybe among some of the teens, that somebody that they know has been subject to a child predator. And, just even that, having that space, a safe space where they can talk about it. So that's why that beauty of having a trained counselor or therapist or social worker alongside us, I think makes us look different than just a teen center. To me, it is, because they have the skill set to really navigate that space, where some of the people that I may hire as staff, they may have that passion and compassion, but when it gets really tough to things like that, you want somebody who's been trained in that trauma-informed care, and somebody who's like really knows like how to do a suicide prevention plan with them, a safety plan, if you will. And so anyway, we rely on our partnerships. I saw one of the questions about how do you volunteer if you are mental health support. Yes, go to our website and volunteer and tell us what role you might be willing to play. I will say this one thing about that. The volunteers that make the most difference at Pro Deo are the ones that say, I can come one day a month, or we have a lady who comes in and does caring with Caroline, and she is one who comes on a consistent basis. So we know her. Caroline's the one who does the, topics, the different topics that are on, oh my goodness, prevention of domestic violence, right? And so that's her role. When they come in, they know they're probably going to be talking about something like that. We put it out there. So there's a relationship there because of the topic that they are sharing. It develops a relationship, as opposed to the volunteer that comes in one time. And maybe they're there for 2 hours, and you need that. But the teens don't know, they may just see them as that adult that's over there. Well, who is that adult, right? But they come consistently or regularly at our teen center, and that's when the relationship begins to happen. And you can really tell some impact's going to happen there.
Yeah. Well, and it really provides that opportunity then for not shying away from those difficult topics, because when you already have the relationship, it's a whole lot easier to even bring up those more deeply emotional issues, for instance.
Right.
So Demetria has a hand raised. I'm gonna bring you on here, Demetria, if you want to unmute and ask your question.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, so I work in the foster care sector, and so I was wondering if you have any contracts. I mean, I know that you are that you provide free services, but do you provide services for those who have children who are in foster care or who are in that special needs sector?
Absolutely, we do. In fact, some of the success stories that I like to talk about are when somebody gets placed. Maybe they're pulled out of, I can just tell you, a girl was pulled out of the urban core, a brother and sister, and they were 15 and 16 years old. And they had been in, 20 different foster cares when they landed in a foster home here in Lee Summit. And you can imagine, our schools are great and they're wonderful, but they're large, right? So the foster care system knows about Pro Deo, and sometimes before then they're dropped into the school system. they are dropped into Pro Deo. So the foster parents and the foster system. So I'm glad, Demetria, you know about us, because that's what we are. Is if we don't, you know, if they're in foster care and they would like to meet a friend before they get infused into the large high schools, that this is a great space for that. So because we typically have about 30 kids on an after school or on a Friday night, maybe 20 during the after school program. It just kind of depends on what we're doing, but definitely that's a much smaller environment to find a friend and know somebody than when you go into the larger high school. So love a relationship with foster care. So we don't have anything other than like MOUs that say they know about us and we know about them, but would love to go even further if it's a possibility.
That's great. All right, well, we are out of time, so we're going to wrap up here. Thank you again, Elaine, for sharing with us today. It was great to hear about your program and know how we can contribute into the future. Just a reminder to all of our participants today, this webinar was recorded. You can access it later on the mentalhealthkc.com website. You can access your certificate of attendance there, or I've just dropped the link and the password for that in the chat. Elaine, did you manage to pull the shared link for your slide deck?
Did I? Let's see.
I don't think I saw it in the chat, but
okay. So let me see how let me.
Well, we can maybe find a way to get that out later to folks.
Yeah. Do you email out the recording? I wonder if you could put a link to, if
I don't think we typically do, but
okay.
I can see about that.
Yeah. If you've got a minute, I can do it. I can save it. Otherwise I should have done that first. I'm so sorry.
I'm pretty sure I can get it to the people who attended live today.
Okay.
So.
Good.
All right. Thank you all very much again for attending. Our next webinar is the 4th Thursday of the month from 12 to 1 p.m. And the topic for the next time is ADHD and women. So we hope to see you again, and thank you all very much.
Thank you.